On December 7, 1941, the U.S. was attacked by Japan on a naval base in Pearl Harbor. Quickly following the attack, FDR declared an entrance into the Second World War.
Not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us.
The people were for going into war against the Japanese because of the attack. And the general feeling was yes.
Although much of the spotlight today exists on the American efforts across the globe, the United States was going through an ideological shift on its home front. The media during the early 1940s portrayed the war as Americans succeeding, defeating any enemy that stood in their way. With very few forms of communication, citizens on the home front lacked an unbiased source of information. Because of the large-scale war effort, citizens on the home front made massive efforts to save American lives. World War II caused a patriotic ideology that prioritized American lives and ideals over everything else. The United States supplied much of the resources used in the war, creating jobs and significant economic growth following the Great Depression. With the increase in jobs and the absence of male workers, there was a spike in the female workforce. Females viewed this as their effort in the war. Also, with many of the U.S. resources being shipped overseas, food and other necessities were in short supply, and therefore rationing began. The United States dropped the world's first atomic bomb on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan to declare defeat and further promoted American nationalism. Citizens received information about the war primarily from newspapers and the radio. At the beginning of the war, the Office of War Information was created to make one line of communication for all wartime knowledge. The Office of War Information created posters, photos, radio shows, movies, and more to display patriotism across the country, hoping to promote the war effort. Everybody either had a radio or knew somebody with a radio that they could listen to. Every day at 3 different times, there would be reports over the radio. With the Office of War Information controlling all the information that Americans received, it created a media filled with propaganda.
The only thing we had was newspapers and radio.
Yeah.
Well, okay, now let me put it this way. It was as realistic as it could be. It's not like television where you could actually see what was going on. You had to listen to the commentator and listen to what they were explaining to what was going on. So there was a difference there. Battles were going on and how far the Americans were advancing.
The U.S. would not allow anything to be seen by the public if it would negatively impact the view of the war effort or the morale of the people.
Those all went through censors, and they in turn wrote the emails. Of course, they couldn't tell you much because of the censors.
On their front page, a list of injuries, deaths, and people missing in combat, further amplifying the war effort across the globe and creating an obligation to give back on the home front. The war affected all parts of the citizens' lives. Nobody could travel in public without the reminder of war. Propaganda posters were littered everywhere. The illustrations of reality of the war hit home for many Americans. Due to the restrictions on imports of many essential foods and other basic commodities, the U.S. government began rationing on the home front in order to have better supply for the troops abroad. Many of the resources were shipped overseas to aid in the war effort. Citizens were entitled to receive ration books that had stamps on them that represented a specific food.
If you didn't have the ration stamp or whatever you needed, and that was everything, you couldn't buy it. Like if you needed a pound of sugar and you didn't have the ration stamp for it, you didn't get it. Although there was a black market, so most people didn't use the black market.
I mean, that
took advantage of a situation.
Although they were not fighting the war, it was a large effort on the home front. The government asked Americans to conserve on everything, not just the rationed items.
That was an ongoing thing. Scrap drives. We as Boy Scouts, almost every weekend, we were on one or another. And I received the Eisenhower Medal for a paper drive. One weekend we did it. It was nationwide. So.
To put rationing in perspective, drivers were sometimes only allotted 2 gallons of gasoline a week. The majority of Americans acted selflessly in regards to following the rationing rules, noting that it was the patriotic thing to do. Because of the constant reminder by the media of troops giving their lives to help the war, citizens felt obligated to give back as well. Many people made extensive efforts toward aiding in the war effort. Some Chicago school children collected 1,000 pounds of scrap metal and kitchen fats to be converted into weapons and munitions. Although the government did not require to do this and is noted by many people as unnecessary, it continued with a nationalistic mindset. With much of the male population fighting in the war, the need for industrial jobs spiked. The U.S. funded the war effort and therefore needed women to fill those jobs. The female labor force doubled in the 1940s. The mobilization rate in the U.S. significantly increased starting in 1940. The most common citizens who moved toward industrial and job-heavy towns were married women without children. Women made great efforts to help in the war effort, oftentimes changing lives to help. When the men came back from the war, they received preferential treatment over women. However, women's efforts in the war improved their societal status because of their patriotic efforts in helping the economy and the war. On August 6, 1945, the world's first atomic bomb was dropped in Japan, killing about 70,000 Japanese civilians. This action by the United States is a great representation about how deep our nationalistic ideals reached. With the sole objective of bringing American troops back home, the United States did whatever it took to do that.
The atomic bomb, I think, wasn't too much of a debate because everybody knew that was going to be the end of the war. I think people were shocked at how many people it killed, but there was, okay, this might mean the end of the war. So there was kind of happiness there.
At the time, there was no controversy. People were simply happy that the U.S. won and that their friends and family would be coming home. The U.S. dropped the bomb to avoid American troops having to invade the Japanese islands. This was viewed as a great patriotic win for the U.S. The United States defeating Japan further perpetuated the idea of American superiority on the world scale. The government's actions during World War II created a country that was more nationalistic than ever before. The thought of democracy triumphing tyranny and dictatorship existed in the minds of Americans following World War II, changing U.S. foreign policy forever.